Hello everyone, welcome to this digital learning platform of Department of Collegiate and Technical Education. Today in this video we are going to discuss Dover Beach, a poem written by Mathew Arnold. Before going to the discussion of the poem, let's make an introduction to it, going through some of the concepts which are needed to understand the poem. First of all, Victorian age. The Victorian era in English literature is between 1837 to 1901. It was the time when in 1837 Queen Victoria came to throne, and she ruled the empire, the English empire, till 1901. It is important to understand that Victorian age was one of the hallmark or very important stage in the history of England, because before Victorian age we see the beginning of industrial revolution almost in the 1780s, 60s and 80s. We see the beginning of industrial revolution, the aftermath of French Revolution that happened in 1789. All these resulted in the lot of changes in the society. So Victorian age paved way for a lot of response from literature, particularly the poetry which was written in the Victorian era, known as Victorian poetry, had its full bloom. Many poets like Robert Browning, Alfred Lord Tennyson, Mathew Arnold, D.G. Rossetti, or even Christina Rossetti, many other like even Jim Hopkins, all of them wrote about the trends of the age. Among these stalwarts of English literary canon, we have Mathew Arnold, who is a poet, a critic, a cultural critic, particularly was by profession an inspector of schools. He was the son of Thomas Arnold, who was the headmaster at Rugby School. Arnold was born in 1822 and lived up to 1888. Arnold is known for his great works, poems, particularly Dover Beach, The Scholar Gypsy, Thyrsis, his critical works like Culture and Anarchy, Literature and Dogma. There are many finest, wonderful creations of Arnold. Among them, today in this part of video, we are attending the discussion of his poem Dover Beach, written in the year 1867. Dover Beach. When come to the term, the phrase Dover Beach, you have a place associated with a common noun beach here, that is Dover. So it's clear that Dover Beach is a poem that is set in the south coast of England, a seashore or a beach near the place called Dover. It's a ferry port of England. It is in between the French coast and the English coast. The Dover Beach is the place which is next to the French coast as well. The concept that forms the background to this Dover Beach is the social milieu of 1850s. The Victorian age in 1850s was a meeting point of tradition and technology. The modern outlook and the traditional attitude were sailing together in a boat called Victorian Age. There were a lot of clashes within the society. The emergence of science brought in new attitude. We have the example of Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, which was published in 1859. It introduced the new theory of evolution. So all these developments led people to a kind of skeptical group of people. I mean, the industrialization introduced or developed materialism in the society. On the other hand, the science and technology, the progress in science and technology brought in skepticism in attitude, looking for reasons for everything. So, under this juncture, with this background, Arnold writes the poem Dover Beach. Arnold is often called as the prophet of modern society. The modern era, which we usually locate after the outbreak of the First World War in 1914, the things happened after 1914 were already envisaged by Mathew Arnold. That's why he is often considered as the prophet of modern society and is one of the early foreteller of the things that dominated the early part of 20th century. His poem Dover Beach in structure is a dramatic monologue. It follows the basic characteristics of dramatic monologue which we have already studied in this paper, that it opens abruptly. It is a poem with an unidentified speaker, though we identify the speaker as the author himself. Still, it's not clearly stated, and it has a passive listener too who never speaks in the poem. Moreover, the poem is it's set in a critical situation. The speaker speaks about some critical situation. The critical situation in the context of the poem is the loss of faith due to the emergence of science. Yes, let's move on to the poem. Let's attempt line by line explanation, stanza-wise explanation first, and then we enter the other aspects, the literary aspects, discussion of the literary aspects in the next part, and also we attempt a critical evaluation of the poem in another part of this series. Yeah, let's come to stanza 1. The poem opens with a very abrupt beginning of the sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. See, look at the opening now. A kind of abrupt opening, a typical feature of a dramatic monologue. It opens like that and describes the seashore near Dover. It is in the south coast of England. Next to that seashore, we have the ending point, the seashore of France as well. Therefore, the poet looks at the seashore of both the countries. Yes, standing near a window, because the line goes ahead like this: gleams and is gone. The light in the French coast gleams and gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast. Out in the tranquil bay, come to the window. Sweet is the air. Sweet is the night air. Right here, it's clear that the setting is in the Dover beach, but the speaker is inside the room somewhere and looking through the window. A beautiful scene of the Dover beach, the beach near the place Dover, that overlooks through the window. The poet observes that beautiful scene. Here you find the very romantic tradition of describing nature in Mathew Arnold also. He appreciates that beautiful scene, sets a foreground for the poem. You see the way it goes ahead. A moonlit shore appears calm, fair, though full of tides. Contrast is there. You see a moonlit shore. It was an evening. In the evening, the moonlight spread it across. Therefore, it was a moonlit shore. It appeared calm, cool, and fair in appearance, though full of tides. Of course, there were many tides in the evening. Still, it appeared calm, fair. And the very description of the coast now brought into a contrast with that of the French shore, because he continues there that the French coast, on the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The light in the French coast disappears, gradually goes out. In the sense, it's clear that the contrast is brought between the English coast and the French coast, and the poet is trying to say the light which was glowing for some time in the French coast gradually disappeared, symbolically saying the state of English country during the Victorian era, because it was a time when there was a concept that the sun never sets for England. That means the empire of England, English empire, was there across the globe. It is even evident in the next phrase. The cliff of England stays stable in the tranquil bay. Right. It is taken here, the image of a cliff. Cliff means the rock. The rock of England that stands for stability, right? It's stable in the tranquil bay. There were no disturbances. The world is probably referred as bay, and in the bay of the world, the English nation was already stable. Giving this very positive background, a very attractive description of nature, he sets the foreground for introducing his theme. Now, at this moment, he invites the listener to the window to view that beautiful scene. It is said that the poem was written after the wedding of Arnold, and he was on his honeymoon trip to that place. Therefore, it is assumed that the listener, the one who is referred in the poem, is probably his beloved. So therefore, he invites that listener to the window and to view the scene. And he says, listen, you are hearing the grating roar. You can see a change in the tone here. He invites her to come to the window. Sweet is the night air. He wanted her to enjoy the air there, night air, which was sweet, which was very pleasant. But once he says that it was sweet, the tone switches to some harsh tone, or rather the other side of the description, that is not very positive in his perception. Therefore, he says, listen, you're hearing the grating roar. Sudden change in the tone can be seen here, from calm to uproar, because the air was sweet in the night air, and thereafter, where the sea meets the moon blanched land, he finds the grating roar. Grating means very irritating sound, right? So, grating roar was heard. And what was the roar? It was of the pebbles which the waves drop back and forth, fling and flinging to the shore, back and forth, right? The waves were bringing the pebbles back and forth. The nuances upon poetry can be observed here. He's observing that movement of the waves. And that movement has created a kind of tremulous cadence, slow, tremulous, a fearful rhythm, right? That has created a kind of eternal note of sadness. It's saying eternal note of sadness. A tremulous cadence is slow. The expression tremulous cadence makes us clear that the appearance of the sea is not very attractive here. That means it's saying something which is eternal note of sadness. The movement of the sea has indicated the poem, has told the poem or showed the poet some kind of eternal note of sadness. That's why it is referred as tremulous, creating fear, tremor, right? Tremulous, cadence, slow, the eternal sadness. So gradually here, the pleasant tone of the poem shifted to that unpleasant situation or unpleasant tone. He takes a turn after the line number 8, in the line number 9. This is somewhat similar to that of a sonnet which follows an octave and sestet. Octave introducing one idea and sestet introducing the other related idea with a change in tone. And none follows that the tradition of a sonnet for this first stanza. We move on to second stanza now. In the second stanza, the Victorian poet's tradition of referring to the classical writers can be observed, because it opens with the line, Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean Sea, Aegean and the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. You can see here that the poet is referring to Sophocles. Who is Sophocles? He was a Greek tragedian. You know about Aeschylus, Sophocles. There were two great tragedians from Greek. We had one comedy writer named Euripides. Sophocles wrote tragedies and showed the world the saddest part of his heroes, the sadness of his heroes, the human misery. And Sophocles has also observed the movement of the Aegean. Aegean is a part of the Mediterranean Sea. In the Mediterranean Sea, then Sophocles observed that human misery in the movement of that water. In both the stanzas, probably you can see a kind of auditory image. Not just the visual image is used, auditory, the sound is taken for comparison. And using that sound as an example, he projects the atmosphere for his poem. So, human misery is indicated, was observed in Sophocles' writing, in his observation of the movement of the water of the Mediterranean Sea. The movement of muddy water in and out of the sea was indicated as a loss of faith then itself. Taking Sophocles as a support, identifying himself with that great tragedian, Arnold goes ahead through his speaker and again proposes that eternal misery. Because the misery which was there during the time of 5th century BC when Sophocles wrote is still there in the time of Mathew Arnold in this era of 20th century also, or 19th century also. Therefore, it is eternal sadness, a note of eternal sadness. Then the speaker finds that again and identifies this universal and eternal misery. Universal because it is there everywhere, eternal because it was there for ages, since from the age of Sophocles, it is still there in the modern era. Therefore, it's a kind of eternal and universal misery. Stanza second clearly indicates or presents that eternal widespread misery which is largely the result of loss of faith. Yes, move on to the stanza 3. In the stanza 3, the poet becomes clear in his theme. He highlights the diminishing faith of his countrymen, particularly in this stanza. He says that the widespread faith of mankind, which was the thing which united the people across the globe once upon a time, and in fact that faith which was the thing which united the Englishmen also, had disappeared. It's no longer there in the present context. So he says it has disappeared. It has lost. Therefore, it is a loss of faith. And the loss of faith has created a kind of melancholy, a sadness. What is the reason for melancholy then? Sadness then? That is a loss of faith. The loss of faith has created this. That's why he opens with the sea of faith was once too at the full and round earth's shore, lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind down the vast edges tree. You can see in these lines clearly indicates that what is left behind now, it is melancholy. What was there earlier, that was faith. The faith is replaced now by melancholy because the faith has lost. It has left behind the chilled night wind, unpleasant night wind where one cannot be happy, and the naked edges of the world. And it has also created a naked edges of the world. The probably naked edges is also referring to the edge of in the very opening of this video, you saw the white cliff there, right? So the edge of the cliff was sharp, and probably taking that image, he says naked edges of the world. It has laid the truth of the word bare. What is the reason for all this then? The naked shingles of the world. What is the reason for that creation? He identifies emergence of new sciences and conflicting opinions. Probably the idea here is that not a condemnation of science, but the way people take it. That is very important. Even today, where it is true that science comes up with something which is useful, but sometimes it is a human beings misuse that and create sadness out of it. Just take the example of the invention of bombs or guns. All these are actually needed for protecting ourselves. But was it really used for protecting? But it is also used for destroying and killing others. While using it so, we create that eternal note of sadness and melancholy. That's the observation Arnold makes towards the end of the 19th century itself. Let's move on to stanza number 4. Here, the speaker tries to find some solution to this problem the situation of loss of faith and the conflict or the critical social situation created out of it. What is the solution? He takes that solution through the speaker, through the listener who is with him, who appears to be his beloved, as I told you, and he calls her to be faithful to him. Oh, love, let us be true to one another. Oh, love, let us be true to one another. For the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new. See, he finds love as a solution there. As you observe in the case of many philosophers, or the messages of all the holy scriptures, when you can love all beings on the earth, there wouldn't be any kind of that sadness. There wouldn't be any kind of that conflict and fight and disturbance in the society. That is the message he's trying to say here. Let us use that love as a true love, as a thing to unite people. And let's be faithful to one another. The modern world is a dream and it seems so beautiful. Of course, it's a dream. It seems so beautiful. But remember that beauty in the surface doesn't have happiness beneath. It's not really a source of joy. It's not really a source of love, light, certainty, peace, or help for pain. All these virtues have become lost in the modern world. There is a loss of hope in the disordered, this artificial world. And identifying all these chaotic social situation, aspects of chaotic situation, Arnold finds only love as a solution to it. Therefore, his theme of love operates here, and he considers that as a true love, as a solution to the problem. And finally, he takes up a metaphor to expose the very condition of the present world. He compares the world to a dark place where we live in ignorance, unaware of anything. The dark place, that is the darkness of mind also. In the mind we have the darkness, we have ignorance, and we don't understand the essence of relationship, human relationship. Unaware of all that, we avenge revenges, we use hatredness, we use all other harsh means to destroy the peace. And considering all this, probably he says, this world is in darkness. It's an ignorant army. Now he compares the whole human race of this era to ignorant army. I can say this era as well. He used it to the Victorian people, his own men. They were ignorant of true virtues, the right things that they can do. Therefore, he says, the ignorant army was battling. So, swept with the confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. Yeah, they are fighting in the night. People are involved in the struggle out of confusion. It's a confusion of what? Whether to cling on to the new ideas, the new faith, or hold on to the earlier one. Whether to accept science or to follow the traditional thing. These are the confusions in the minds of men. Therefore, it's similar to ignorant armies fighting with each other in the darkness. Here, it's clear that Arnold is attempting a kind of criticism of life. Criticism of life. For him, poetry is criticism of life, and he makes it clearly that it's criticism of living styles of people. The criticism of the corrupted modern world where there is a decline of morality and faith. So he makes a criticism here in order to correct that, and in order to contribute to the refinement. Thus, the poem is a voice of decreasing and losing faith and values during the age and the dangers associated with that. And he finds the solution of love as a kind of uniting factor. He is worried about that loss of faith, which was the uniting factor in the world once upon a time. And he writes that, taking the example of the seashore, setting the poem in the seashore of Dover Beach. So thus, the poem, by reflecting the trends of the society, is an important poem of Victorian age in English literature. And through the projection of the chaotic situation of the age, very disturbed social situation, the poem makes a critique of declining faith during the age. And it speaks of the dangers that the countrymen are heading for. And he also tries to find love as a solution to all that chaotic social condition. Anyhow, thank you for listening to me.